to you. We've all definitely been following these situations in places like Abbotsford and Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam. It makes you wonder about how many other cities and how many other people are affected like this. What is your advice to someone who goes out tonight and gets into a similar situation? And how do you think they should handle police? In retrospect, do you think there's something you could have done that maybe could have either expedited the response or gotten a better result?
I could have either A, not stopped to try and help someone, or B, I could have just stayed there regardless of what the dispatch officer told me, because I wasn't going to further the instigation any further, as I stayed in my car and I was far enough away that if it came running at me, it would have taken about 5 minutes to get to. So in retrospect, I would have stayed around the area in order to identify the suspect at the scene instead of leaving. Regardless of how long it would have taken the police to show up, it would have been a better result, in my opinion.
We are, of course, live tonight on SomethingCool.ca and on stickcam.com tonight. And, of course, we do have an interactive chat that people are allowed to partake in. And, of course, what happens a lot of times when we do interviews, we get some people that come on that want to ask you questions. And so tonight we do have a couple of questions from our reader audience here. Would you like to answer a couple questions?
Sure, why not?
Well, one of the questions that I have here on my screen is from someone that wants to know, how you feel about the fact that the police do work a lot of hours, that they do tend to work a lot of overtime, and that they've been handcuffed, that's the exact quote here, handcuffed by the government and are forced to operate on short budgets and with limited government support. And yet are somehow able to catch murderers or somehow able to solve major crimes. Don't you feel that what happened to you is perhaps an acceptable loss given all the other successes that the police are able to procure for themselves?
So what successes are we speaking of here? Like getting promotions while driving home drunk, driving on the wrong side of Boundary Road, getting caught and then released. I don't exactly see where the successes have been coming recently. And I could really care less if there wasn't a lot of overtime, because who doesn't work overtime? Myself, a 100-hour work week. Well, not 1 week, but over a paycheck. I've worked well over 100 hours before, but I'm not bitching and complaining. Sorry about the language. About the fact that I'm overworked, so I should lessen the quality of my work because I work so often.
Well, there's obviously, we hear the police talk about all the time wanting to increase budgets, wanting to increase the amount of police hours on the street, but that costs money. That costs funds that, of course, the government is competing with heavily. With, as you know, right now there's a strike going on right now in Vancouver. There's usually some sort of hospital union strike going on every couple of years. There's the Olympics coming up. There's always a competition for funds. Do you blame the government at all for this? What happened to you?
No, because to be quite honest, I wouldn't say it's the government. I wouldn't even say it's the individuals as police officers. I'd just say it's the whole business model, so to speak of, that they run under. It just seems so backwards that they put so much police force into traffic control, as opposed to putting it towards things like assaults that they're allegedly so overburdened with. If they're that heavily burdened with that kind of incident, don't you think it would make a little bit more sense to stop trying to make their presence known and put it towards actually solving these problems?
Another question I have here from a reader is to ask you, don't you think you're doing the community a disservice by suggesting that people not call in if they're in trouble? Don't you think that could lead to more crimes going unpunished?
Sure, but if they're not getting solved anyways, what's the problem with not calling again? But besides, if it's something as little as the police made it happen to me, then why should we tie up their time with that so they can go after the much larger problems?
The police obviously do not have a 100% failure rate. They do tend to clear quite a number of the crimes that are committed, and I'm not sure the exact percent, of course, and I'm sure they wouldn't reveal it to me. But they do not have a 100% failure rate, and a lot of times people do call them. They do get the kind of response they're looking for, and do have their cases resolved successfully.
Okay, even though you don't have an exact number for statistics, you also have to take in the outside calls as well. Like there's a domestic disturbance going on that's happening at someone's house. It's just because they have a possible high rate of success, you've got to take outside variables into account. It's not necessarily just because someone has been assaulted. It's not necessarily a murder case. could be anything as someone called about a reckless driver or a drunk driver stuck at this. It's very easy to shoot fish in a barrel, and if the person seems stuck at that situation, of course they're going to catch them.
So then you, I mean, do you believe they should have a 100% success rate?
I think it would be impossible to ever achieve 100%. Even if we gave them all the funding in the world, it would be impossible to solve some of the crimes that are committed. However, if they did have such a great budget, it would make a much better rate of success. Because just judging from what you've had on your website alone about the local problems, it's not an isolated incident. It just happened to me. It's happened to other people before in other cities. But it's all been dealt with RCMP, and they don't seem to have such a great success rate. And of course, models that as well by only really publishing the not so great things. People like drama, but with the positive things, I think that they should probably have a better success rate in a situation as cut and dry as mine, where I was punched in the face. I saw the guy. I gave the description of the only person wearing a bloody T-shirt, a shaved head, in the group. I don't see how they can be like, okay, well now you have to come identify him. Well, I gave you the full description, so what's so hard to figure out about this?
Right. So, I mean, basically, you think, I guess, in your situation, I mean, it comes down to a situation of common sense versus maybe laziness or bureaucracy, in that they could simply have come and met you when you had the kids in your sight. They could have arrested the kid that you pointed out as being responsible. They could have taken him down to the station, where he could have been processed, fingerprinted, charged with the crime of assaulting you, and this perhaps might have resolved your situation relatively, certainly faster than they did it, and would actually perhaps have the right result.
As much as I'd like to see it done that way, I'm sure there are some legalities, such as beating on the witness, stuff like that, and they can actually go ahead and just apprehend the guy and bring him in front of me, although would it certainly make much more sense? Yes.
Definitely true. Now, do you think perhaps, I mean, there's this view, of course, that the public has, that the courts don't seem to care about imposing harsh sentences, and that the kids, as you said, these kids themselves were only 17, 18 years old. They don't seem to care so much about getting caught, and perhaps for this exact reason, nothing seems to happen. So do you feel that your incident is another example of why it is that kids do things like this, just because they don't think they can get caught?
I don't think it has so much to do with that. Whenever it comes down to situations like this, I think it always comes down to parenting. I'd say the kids probably aren't neglected or something like that, but just because you can get away with something doesn't mean you're going to do it more often. Just because I could get away with maybe stealing stuff from work doesn't mean that I'm going to all of a sudden like start stealing more. I still know that it's morally wrong. I could care less if the police are going to catch me doing something. It's just the fact of the matter is that I was raised in a way that I find it wrong, and I shouldn't do that.
Well, there is a bit of a precedent. I mean, I've done some interviews myself with some local graffiti artists, actually, and they told me before they were caught red-handed with the spray can in their hand, spray painting the side of a building, and the cops caught them, and basically they had their stuff confiscated and told, don't do this again, and that was it. And, of course, they said, well, that wasn't enough to stop me. They were out the very next night going back to what they did again because, like I said, they weren't afraid of the police anymore. They lost their fear of getting caught. And it actually didn't solve anything. All it cost them was, $29 to buy some new supplies, and that was it.
I'd say that's kind of comparing apples and oranges in this particular situation, especially seeing how they were spray painting a building. They weren't punching someone in the face and vandalizing their property.
But they did vandalize your car, and I mean, it does go to the sense where the kids perhaps feel they can get away with these minor crimes, and I don't mean to take away from what happened to you, but these relatively minor things that happen in compared to murders and break-ins and full armed robberies, because the police aren't actually going to pursue it with the same diligence they would pursue a murder or an attempted murder or an armed robbery or something like that. Don't you feel that perhaps has some relevance to what's going on here with you?
I could see how one would perceive it that way, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't really see it just because they can get away with it is the reason for doing it more. I think it's just because of the way that society's built up and stuff like that. And that's a whole other argument. We'd probably take another
interview to get through that itself. So I guess in closing, Jason, I guess you would say you're kind of disenfranchised with the police. Do you intend to call them again if something happens to you, or are you just going to go for that baseball bat next time?
Well, depending on the situation, I might call them. If it's something as small as getting punched in the face again, I guess.